Welcome to Kiffin's Keep, an intellectual resource for the pillar and buttress of the truth, which is the church. This is a project at the London Lyceum, which is an institution dedicated to serious thinking for a serious church. I'm Jordan Stefaniak, host of Kiffin's Keep and president of the London Lyceum. And today I am planning on talking about Baptists and open membership and open communion. Before I do that, let me remind you to go ahead and click the subscribe button and click the like on the video, and then drop a comment below on whether you agree or disagree with my take. So in coming to this topic, I don't know why I decided to record a video on it, other than I saw some people talking about this topic recently and thought, well, you know what, I want to chat about it again. So it was, I don't know how long ago, we did a video with the London Lyceum officially, where we talked about open communion and open membership. And it was with, I think we had like 7 or 8 guys. I think I was the only person that was open membership in any sense. Everybody else was closed or close. And I thought it was one of my favorite titles for a video: Baptism, and Bunyan's Wall of Division. But I don't think that gets the algorithm on YouTube very well, and that's why a lot of people haven't watched it. I did put together a presentation for that episode, though I did it in like 4 minutes on going over the material, and I thought, let me expand on that a little bit, but I'm going to use some of the same ideas and talking points that I had there, but if I keep it focused in this particular channel, I think people can stay more focused on the arguments at hand. So as a preface, I would never counsel a Paedo-Baptist to join a Credo-Baptist church except in extraordinary circumstances. So much of what I discuss here is hypothetical in nature. Most of the time, if a Paedo-Baptist wants to join a Credo-Baptist church, the simple thing to do is to say, look, there's a great gospel-preaching Paedo-Baptist church 2 minutes down the street. Why don't you go there? It's in extreme rare cases, if you are living in Montana or Alaska or somewhere where you didn't have another option, that you would then say, look, even though you have these convictions, let's go ahead and consider membership here at this Baptist church, even though you have different convictions. So these are my personal views, and I realize that I'm in the minority on this, though I don't think I should be. I know Gavin Ortland is probably the most ironic and popular person out there saying that these things are true, and I agree with him. So there's a couple of reasons I think you should be open membership. And I have 4 of them listed here, and you can see them. I'm going to put this PowerPoint on the screen so you can see it as I work through it. One is Catholicity. I think that's probably one of the most important pieces to the conversation and the debate. Now that does get twisted and confused a little bit, so I want to spend some time talking about it. And then sacraments and membership is the number 2 thing. I think this is a really important argument that doesn't get talked about enough. Catholicity seems to be the one that's thrown out, but it's not really developed, whereas sacraments and membership, I don't see this one being, really explained or expanded upon. And then third is the nature of baptism itself and how the Second London Confession of Faith explains what baptism is. And then fourth is that I think there are a lot of inconsistencies in the closed membership position that are very difficult to resolve. So let me go through one argument from Catholicity to defend why I think open membership is the right position. So Nicene Creed, it says that we believe in one holy Catholic Church, Catholic and Apostolic Church. We affirm one baptism for the forgiveness of sins. So I would take it that to be Catholic is to affirm the Nicene Creed, Catholic in the lowercase sense of whether you're Roman or Eastern or Protestant, you all would be lowercase c Catholic, or you should be. So you take that to be a baseline assumption. Then here is a premise: if the Nicene Creed is representative of Catholicity, which I think most people would say, yeah, I think that's probably true, then its clause on baptism is representative. I think that's pretty standard. And then the third piece is, if Baptists deny baptism as valid to Paedo-Baptists, then they are denying this clause in the Nicene Creed, therefore Baptists are not Catholic. I think that argument, it works. The question is whether premise 3 is valid or not. So I think, or true or not. So are Baptists really denying one baptism for the forgiveness of sins. I don't know. A lot of Baptists would probably say, well, look, I'm not denying what that's talking about is regeneration or spirit baptism. It's not discussing the practice of water baptism, this outward initiatory rite. So I think there are ways to get around it, though I think that's an important and interesting argument. Here's one on Catholicity again, but this focuses on the sacraments and the membership piece. So number one, membership in the church is based on whether someone is a Christian. I think that should be a standard account. If you want to be a member of the church, you must be a Christian. I think most Protestants would say, yes, that should be right. Except, if you go back, well, then it gets all questionable where I guess Lutherans would say, well, your children are Christians and therefore, yes, they can be members, or other denominations might say the same thing. Let's bracket out those questions. Let's just assume here membership in the church is based on whether someone's a Christian. Yes, we agree. Number two, if a church denies someone membership, then they are saying that person is not a Christian. I think this is the key move here, that Baptists who are not open membership do not recognize and do not engage and do not deal with. I have yet to hear a very solid explanation or answer to this piece, because from those two premises you get this conclusion. Therefore, if a Baptist church denies someone membership because of paedobaptism, then they are saying that person is not a Christian. Now, I've seen people sidestep this and come up with reasons why this you can get out of it. I don't see how you can. I think this logically follows. And you basically have to redefine what membership is in order to get out of this problem. And I think that is too much to give up. I think we should stay consistent with what we think membership should mean. And if we do that, then open membership. That's the solution. So that's one way. Another way to do it. Then there's also the nature of baptism that you find in the Second London Confession of Faith. So if you go to chapter 28 and chapter 29, there are a couple of interesting and important pieces to it. So I'm going to flash this on the screen here that you can see. So there's a couple things that I've highlighted, I've highlighted them in this gold, which is supposed to be the necessary conditions for what constitutes baptism. And if you see in chapter 28, section 2, I mentioned the qualified churchmen, qualified and thereunto called. That, according to the Second London, is a necessary condition. I think water is a necessary condition. I think being baptized in the triune name is a necessary condition. And then the profession of faith itself is a necessary condition. So you look in 29:2, those who do not actually profess repentance toward God. What is necessary for a proper administration is that you have profession prior to baptism, and you have immersion. And I'm going to say that those are necessary for proper administration, but that means you can have profession after your baptism, or you can be sprinkled upon or poured upon, and it can still be a valid, though improper, baptism. And I think that fits with what the Second London Confession of Faith says. And I think here is the final piece that I wanted to mention, the closed inconsistencies. So let's think through here. If the exact mode of baptism is necessary, absolutely necessary for baptism, meaning it invalidates an infant baptism for someone who later has faith, or someone that has baptism through pouring, even though they professed and had faith prior to it. If it's that necessary, and it invalidates those things and says, no, those are not baptisms, you just got wet, you took a bath, it's not baptism at all, I have a couple of questions, and I want to have good answers to them, because oftentimes I'll ask all these questions. I'll be honest, I have the problem of kind of vomiting too much out and then not really focusing on just one piece and saying, answer this one thing. So it gives you an option to kind of sidestep some of the questions. But I think these are important, and I would love to have answers to them from people who say open membership is problematic. So question here, why does using grape juice or leavened bread not invalidate communion? Because if communion or the Eucharist or whatever you want to call it is identical in nature as a sacrament to baptism, you would think that if we're going to be that serious in baptism about things like mode, then we should be that serious in the same sense with communion. So if we're going to allow grape juice or going to allow leavened bread, then that seems like, well, why are we loose there but not loose over here? It was done with wine and unleavened bread. Another question, why do we accept baptisms that are done by an unqualified person in, say, a river apart from the context of the local church? Now, maybe you would say, no, I don't accept those as baptisms, but I think a lot of Baptists who recoil at things like open membership would say those are valid, and then to me, that's a major inconsistency. Though I think that one's a little bit easier to resolve. Most Reformed Baptists who are sort of in the context I'm in would say, no, I would absolutely disagree with that as well. Number 3, another question. Why would we allow a paedobaptist to preach at our church? If they can administer the fountain and foundation of the sacraments in the Word, how can we deny them the table? I find this very odd and ironic. And I know, Mark Dever has often said, well, I guess people point to Mark Dever because he's strong against open membership, and I love Mark, and they'll say, well, look, you have Ligon Duncan, a Paedo-Baptist preacher at your church, and of course his funny retort is, well, Lig was baptized as a believer, so it doesn't count. But I think the question still remains here. It's quite weird to allow someone to preach the word when you wouldn't let them take the table or become a member. That seems like you're divorcing membership from the sacraments, and that seems like that is inconsistent to me with Scripture and with how we should think about the theology of the sacraments, the theology of the preaching of the Word, and how all these things are connected. The last question I have here is one that I don't think is brought up nearly often enough, but should be. So why do we not rebaptize the member that later determines they only became regenerate in the hour, day, week, month, etc. following their baptism? So I can come with like myriad of examples. I've heard this all the time. Someone, upon reflection, they determine, you know what, I actually wasn't a believer until whatever it is after baptism, whether it's 6 hours or 6 months or 6 years. And they often, upon reflection, find this out after they've been a member at this church for X number of years. Why is it that Baptist church doesn't say you must be baptized for the first time, truly, because you were never baptized previously? Why do they do not pursue church discipline then to excommunicate that person, saying unless you are biblically baptized, then you will be excommunicated from the church? I think that's problematic because that happens more often than we would like to admit. And if Baptists don't deal with that properly and don't have a consistent answer, then I don't know what's going on here. And lastly, the unfortunate claim that seems to get thrown around a lot is if you're open membership or if you're open communion, then you are not a Baptist. And I think, well, that's just historically unfounded. So you have, I'm going to show a list here of Baptists in history who have been open membership or open communion. You have men like Henry Jesse, who is a tremendously influential Baptist in the early Baptist movement. You have Daniel Turner. You have John Collett Ryland. You have James Hinton. Now, obviously, I think when you push this objection, what you get is really saying, well, no, it's not that you can't be a Baptist in name. You can't be Baptist theologically. And I still say, no, that's not true. You have to counter the theological arguments that I've provided. I'm not providing just pragmatic arguments in defense of open membership and open communion. I'm providing theological arguments from the nature of the sacraments, from the nature of Catholicity, and unless you're willing to engage those on theological grounds and say there is absolutely no theological option from what you're arguing, I don't see how you can say that this view is not Baptist, especially if open communion and open membership are not banned in the Second London Confession of Faith, the most robust and well-known Baptist confession, Reformed Baptist confession that we have, being purposefully removed from the confession itself. I don't think we can then make the judgment that open membership isn't Baptist, right? Besides making Baptist identity something that's like a wax nose that we may reshape in our own identity because we want to, then what confession then do we have if we're willing to make judgments beyond the confession and make claims about Baptist identity that goes beyond what is laid out there clearly and is intentionally removed? I think this ends up destabilizing Baptist identity and removes it from our own hands, or removes it from the hands of our confessional heritage and places it in our own hands, in individuals and moderns who can make revisions. And I know I don't want to trash talk all moderns. All moderns are not bad, but sometimes it's fun to make the pejorative label, right? Because I'm usually the one defending moderns, and here I'm calling you a modern for making a revision to the confession in this sense. So the Second London Confession also has an appendix, and I'm going to put it on the screen here. I'm going to read a few sentences from it and then make a couple comments. So it says, "We are not insensible that as to the order of God's house and entire communion, therein there are some things wherein we, as well as others, are not at a full accord among ourselves. For instance, the known principle and state of the conscience of diverse of us that have agreed in this confession is such that we cannot hold church communion with any other than baptized believers and churches constituted of such. Yet some others of us have a greater liberty and freedom in our spirits that way, and therefore we have purposefully omitted the mention of things of that nature, to endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace, and in order thereunto to exercise all lowliness and meekness, with long-suffering, forbearing one another in love." So it intentionally removes it because they wanted to maintain peace among Baptists, which I think number one, that's a great posture. The London Lyceum is all about having this sort of charitable, curious disposition, and I think that's exactly modeled here in this confession. But it's also telling us that intentionally it's removed this because it is a matter of debate, an intramural Baptist debate. I think it's the right view to take open membership and open communion, and I would defend that, and I have defended that. And I know I'm in the minority, but I would love to hear you if you have a response to any of these arguments in particular. I mean, if you have a response to all of them, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you and what you think. Maybe I'll do another video on this if you guys think there's enough material here, but I'd appreciate what you guys think. I mean, maybe you're not a Baptist. Maybe you're listening in as a non-Baptist and you've got thoughts. Go ahead and drop comments there for them too. Either way, I love hanging out with you guys, and I look forward to talking to you soon.